Your mic. It's good to be in community at a time like this. These are tough times. I don't have TV, which means I have less secondary trauma than most of you. But also means I can get out of sync with many people, most people. So last night, finally got home and settled in bed with my partner Laura and my dog Emmy. I got on my iPad and started to look at the pictures of these beautiful men, mostly men and some women, young, brown skin, gorgeous, and read, the last text message they sent, or the last conversation they had with their parent or their lover or their child. And I was just, I felt like I got kicked in the gut about 10 times. You saw the names. There's Stanley and Eduardo and Luis and Kimberly and Amanda and Oscar and Rodolfo and Antonio and Angel and Juan and Corey and Tevin and Simon, and my God, if only this was a bad dream and we wake up and they'd all be fine, we'd be good. But it's not a bad dream. It actually happened. And there's nothing I can say that can make this okay, because it's not okay. Nothing about it is okay. There are some things, though, I do think need to be said. And one is, there's been a lot of talk about how complex the motive was. And yeah, we're complex. Humans are complex. But let's be clear, whatever the other motives were, he was motivated by racism and homophobia. Needs to be said over and over again. And we, sadly, need to take it in and realize that as far as we've come, we have a long way to go. As far as we've come, we have a long way to go. Of course, even in our bubble here in Sonoma County, we actually knew that to be true. Just the controversy over the bathrooms was enough to let us know what was lurking below the surface. And you might say, what's the big deal about a bathroom? Well, it turns out bathroom is a basic human need, pretty regular, right? And the thing to think about is you're very vulnerable when you go to the bathroom. And the fact that people can't see that tells us that they can't see us. And if they can't see you, it's easier to hurt you. We just need to wake up and understand that the fight is still needing to be fought. But not in anger, but still we have to fight. One of the ways my ancestors, my tribe, the Jewish people, cope with tragedy is to tell healing stories. And I want to tell a story from the heart of Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical tradition. It's actually a creation story. We have many creation stories, not just the two in Genesis or the fragments in Psalms. There's a lot of creation stories, it turns out. So this one was received by a great rabbi in the Middle Ages, actually lived in Israel, in Sfat. The Ari is called, the lion. He was a wild guy. It was like Haight-Ashbury there. And he received a lot of revelation. And this is the story. Initially, there was just God. But God was lonely and yearned for relationship. So God needed to make a space in order to create a partner, to create a world. So God did what's called tzimtzum. Try it. Tzimtzum, which is to withdraw a little bit. Tzimtzum. We all sometimes have to do that, by the way. And God did this, tzimtzum, and created space, and then poured God's divine light into holy vessels that God created, like jars or vessels. And they started to vibrate and shake, and boom! They blew up. And the world was created in a divine catastrophe. It's a Big Bang Theory. And it's called Shivrata Kelim, the broken vessels. And really the story is that God meant us to bask in God's divine light, which probably would have been boring. We should thank Eve, actually. because the garden would be very boring. But instead, what happened is there was a catastrophe, and the world was created in a shattered, broken way. And our task became to put the pieces back together. God is embedded in the shards, and when we put the pieces back together, the divine is released into the world. In this story, the future is in our hands. God is in our hands. We are the hands and feet of God. We choose whether we contribute to the repair of the world or its brokenness. Scapegoating Muslims just deepens the fractures. Combating hate and bigotry of all kinds, including Islamophobia, helps repair the breach. Giving in to cynicism and despair, which is easy to do given our political reality, just creates more brokenness. Civic engagement for positive change, showing up and being heard, offers the possibility of healing. I imagine many here tonight are angry. Fight or flight is the biological response. Our reptilian brain wants to do that. And actually, Reverend Edward already spoke about it. To be fully human, though, is to be able to overcome our reptilian mind and do something different. Jewish tradition has a great saying, in a place where no one is human, one should strive to be human. And striving to be human means not acting on our anger. We can feel anger, but to act in anger is to fracture the world even more brokenness. No one knew this better than the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to share just a few words. Some of you know me know that he's one of my idols, one of my idols. He writes in the book, one of my heroes, that's the better word. Idols. He writes in the book, Where Do We Go From Here, which he published in 1967. Where do we go from here, chaos or community? He writes, hate is just as injurious to the hater as it is to the hated. Like an unchecked cancer, hate corrodes the personality and eats away its vital unity. Many of our inner conflicts are rooted in hate. This is why psychiatrists say, love or perish. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. We must love and not hate. But let's be clear what love means. It's not eros, romance, or lust, nor is it that kind of abstract love you hear around town. When it says in Leviticus, the third book of the 5 books of Moses, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's where Jesus got it from, by the way. It is a commandment to love your neighbor. And it means first to respect your neighbor. And by the way, your neighbor is not just the person sitting next to you, who looks like you, who talks like you, who's culturally similar to you. It's the person who's different, maybe smelly, maybe scary. Your neighbor also, in other places, is called the stranger, or the widow, or the orphan, which are ancient Israelite code words for the most vulnerable people. So, in other words, your neighbor includes not only people that are different from you, but also and especially people who are the most vulnerable. You love them by respecting them. You love them by protecting them. You love them by caring for them. The love I'm talking about is muscular, muscle-bound, resilient, and strong. So, we choose by our actions, whether we will help repair the world or contribute to its brokenness. Whether we will be partners with God or instruments of God's destruction. We choose every day, many times a day. We choose, but more than anything right now, we need healing. Orlando needs healing. Our world needs healing. God needs healing. And so I'd like to turn to some healing words from the Hebrew Bible that we use in our prayer services to pray for healing. There's only 4 Hebrew words. It's not hard, I promise, and there's even some English. El na refanala, El na refanala, El na refanala, El na refanala. English. Please, God, let healing be now. 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 El na refanala, El na refanala,